This is the RamanaMaharshi Satsang. I'm reading from and commenting on the Ashtavakra Gita. Listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke. I'm not a guru or a teacher. Ramana's teaching of non-duality is deep and profound, and I want to share it. I'm reading from and commenting on the Ashtavakra Gita. It focuses on deep contemplation and meditation to bring what is heard and reflected upon into your direct experience. Today, reading from chapter 19, verses 5 through 8. And these are the final verses of this chapter where Ashtavakra talks about repose in the self. Where is sleeping, dreaming, waking, or even the fourth state? Where is fear? I abide in the glory of self. Where is close or far, in or out, gross or subtle? I abide in the glory of self. Where is life and death? Where is the world and worldly relations? Where is distraction and stillness? I abide in the glory of self. There is no need to talk about the three ends of life. To talk of yoga is purposeless. Even talking about truth is irrelevant. I rest in self alone. So let's go into these verses. 19:5. Where is sleeping, dreaming, waking, or even the fourth state? Where is fear? I abide in the glory of self. Ashtavakra reminds you that the states of waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and even the so-called fourth state are passing appearances within awareness. You may think of them as real divisions of experience, yet they come and go. While they pass by, the self is constant, untouched by these shifting states. Fear itself belongs to these passing experiences arising from identification with the body and mind. When you recognize that your nature is the self, you see that fear has no foundation. What remains is a steady awareness that does not waver. The verse encourages you to rest in what does not change, what is always. The waking state feels most real, but it disappears each night in sleep, just as dreams fade when you awaken. Even in deep sleep, which appears blank, it is not your true nature. The self is the light of consciousness in which these states rise and fall. Recognizing this helps you see that fear belongs only to the shifting states and not to the self. You are invited to stop identifying with the body and mind that fear death and loss, and to notice that the self has never been touched. In meditation, this insight brings stability and confidence as you learn to abide in what is beyond change. 19.6. Where is close or far, in or out, gross or subtle? I abide in the glory of self. Here, the verse dissolves the categories by which you divide your experience. You usually think of things as near or distant, internal or external, coarse or refined. Yet, when you abide in the self, these distinctions lose meaning. The self has no boundaries, so it cannot be labeled as close or far. There is no in or out to something that is boundless. Even the idea of gross and subtle belong to the mind, not the self. And seeing this, you rest in that which is beyond all opposites. This verse is deeply practical for you because much of your suffering comes from creating opposites and clinging to them. You think in terms of distance. What is far seems unreachable. What is close feels familiar. You imagine an inner world of thought and an outer world of objects. You compare what is gross and material to what is subtle and spiritual. This verse tells you that all such divisions are illusions of the mind. The self is not near or far. It's not inside or outside, and it is not made of levels. The self is whole. By recognizing this, you release the constant habit of measuring, comparing, and separating. In practice, this knowledge brings great peace because you no longer chase after what seems far away or try to hold on to what feels close. You are already resting in the self, which is beyond all divisions. 19.7. Where is life and death? Where is the world and worldly relations? Where is distraction and stillness? I abide in the glory of self. Ashtavakra shows you that what you call life and death are appearances within awareness, not attributes of the self. Similarly, the world and its relationships belong to passing forms, not to the essence of who you are. Even distraction and stillness, which seems like opposites in spiritual practice, are recognized as movements within awareness. The self remains the same, regardless of whether the mind is restless or quiet. In the knowledge of the self, these distinctions lose their hold on you, and you rest in that which is unchanging. This verse has profound significance for your practice because it strips away the deepest fears and deepest attachments. The fear of death fades when you see the self is not born and does not die. The concern with worldly ties loosens when you see that they belong to appearances and not to your essence. The effort to control your meditation, even trying to avoid distraction and reach stillness, is shown to be unnecessary because the self is untouched by either. This frees you from trying to manage conditions, whether physical, emotional, or mental. Your task becomes simple: to know and rest in the self, no matter what appears. This knowledge gives you courage in facing mortality, peace in daily relationships, and a deeper acceptance of your own mind in practice. 19.8. There's no need to talk about the three ends of life. To talk of yoga is purposeless. Even talking about truth is irrelevant. I rest in self alone. This verse points to the final simplicity. The three ends of life are goals people pursue: Dharma, living in harmony with truth; Artha, material well-being; or Kama, physical pleasure, lose meaning when you rest in the self. Even the practices of yoga and discussions of truth are unnecessary once you recognize what you are. The self is already complete and does not require effort or debate. This is not a rejection of practice, but a recognition that the highest knowledge leaves no further need for words. Silence itself becomes the teaching because the self is directly present. This verse is a call to the highest freedom. You may have spent years pursuing the goals of duty, desire, or liberation, and perhaps have followed spiritual disciplines with great effort. At a certain point, the teaching reminds you that these were only supports, not the end. Once you recognize the self, you no longer need to lean on practices or even ideas of truth. Silence and resting in what you are becomes enough. This is not a dismissal of effort, but a fulfillment of it. For the effort brought you to a point where effort falls away. For you, this verse invites a gentle but radical trust to stop seeking and live from the self directly. These verses guide you to see that all distinctions, states, and opposites are appearances within awareness and do not belong to the self. By recognizing this, you are invited to rest in the self as your true nature, where fear, striving, and separation no longer have meaning. And now we have a dialogue with Nome where he says, "You are not an observer in the waking state."
Following your words, the experience was over and over again, turning the mind back in on itself and inquiring, who am I? And it's almost like these mandalas of inquiry, going round and round, further inward. And what I notice starts to happen is that the waking state and the elements that you pointed out of the individual, the world, and God start to disappear just like last night's dream disappears from the waking state. So I was asking myself, what's actually happening when I negate the waking, or from the waking state? How is it that I can actually negate the dream state? And I think the inquiry reveals it, because I'm not in the dreaming state from the waking state, because it's entirely unreal. I am not in it at all. There's no I in the dream state, it's gone. And as I keep doing the inquiry as you speak, the same thing happens with the waking state as my identity just gets extracted from it. And just keep coming back to who am I?
You are not an appearance in the waking state. Obviously, you're not an appearance in the dream state. You are not even the appearance, if we can call it such, in the deep dreamless sleep state. You're nothing that appears in the three states. Similarly, you are not the experiencer of the waking state, nor of the dream, nor of sleep. Your existence cannot be described as a state. The confusion regarding one's identity is the cause of all other kinds of illusion, such as a state, a mind, a world, experience within that, time, space, and the rest of it. If we understand that the object depends entirely upon the subject, the known upon the knower, and unswervingly inquire to know the knower, existence as it is, the self remains. Just as it is not in any state, it is not in any life, it is not born, it does not perish. Now, if you're not in the waking state and you're not a waking state experiencer, then everything that has been conceived in the waking state at any time is equally delusive. Beyond the three states, birthless and deathless, the self has been referred to as Turiya, the fourth, something other than the three states. It is of the nature of infinite consciousness. But so that we would not think of that as another kind of state, wise sages have also declared it to be beyond the fourth. That is, free of any such conception. Now, what would you think of a man who woke up from his dream, so that the dream was over, and says that the dream is not real, but would continue to believe in what he dreamed, as if it were still existing? The things and ideas that populated his dream. The dream is over, he's not in there. But it would be absurd if he went on thinking that the things and thoughts of the dream still remained. Likewise is it with any vasanas retained by one who has heard the truth about his nature.
And now we'll take a few minutes and inquire. You exist. You exist, and you know that you exist. So inquire, investigate within yourself. Who is aware of waking, dreaming, and sleep? if I set aside the idea of inner and outer, what remains? Who is aware of both distraction and stillness? And I rest as the self without relying on words or practice. Who am I? What am I? All right. Then we'll close with a chant. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, peace, peace, peace. All right. What did you get from the verses or Nome or your own inquiry today?
Well, what Nome is saying that you're not the appearance, so you can't be an object to yourself. So you are the light of pure awareness,
Yes,
shines in the heart of all
yes,
as I am.
yes. I love it how uh, poetical and expressive Nome is.
Yeah, yeah. And it was good to hear the voice of our friend Jim Clarke.
Jim always had the best questions.
Yeah, he had some good ones. Yeah.
Yes,
And how the first object, the first thing that appears is that I thought.
yes,
And that's where we start.
and we end.
That's right. Yeah, no beginning, no end. Yeah.
Now, the next talk I'm going to give to you in November the title of it is Awakening the Parable of the Ten Bulls.
The 10 bulls.
Yeah, you don't know the Ten Bulls? They're one of my faves. They're from Zen and before Zen.
Oh, no, I don't know that one.
Okay, I'll send you a copy.
Or tune in on November 9th.
Okay.
That's right. That's a book that I read in my early 20s. And even though you're not supposed to be keeping score and tracking progress, that's a book that I've used to track my progress for the last 50 years.
I look forward to getting that.
Okay.
Yeah. Once again, it's so good to be together.
Yes, always.
Ashtavakra is really a powerhouse.
Yes, that's one of the most powerhouses of all the texts, I think.
Yeah.
And as we're going through it, I'm seeing again just how powerful the text is.
Yeah, wonderful.
Anyway,
I'm gonna,
namaste.
I'll be traveling, and if I can, I'll try and log in like Bruce does while he's traveling.
Okay.
But I hope I can make it.
Have a good time in the Catskills.
Well,
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Namaste.
Bye.
namaste and good travel.
Namo Ramanaya.